can't plan some of that stuff. It just works way too good. Today I'm going to talk about faith. Last Sunday, we talked about hope. And then today we're talking about faith. Next Sunday morning, I'm going to talk about joy. And next Sunday evening, I'm going to talk about love. And so those are basic, that's the meaning of the 4 Advent candles that are there. And so as we're going through this, today it's faith. I wanted to share with you how that applies to us at this Christmas time. There is a Bible chapter in the Bible, Hebrews chapter 11, that is called the Faith chapter. If any of you have your Bibles with you, I would encourage you to mark them up during the service this morning. Go down, grab a pencil, a pen, whatever, a highlighter if you've got it, and go through chapter 11, and every time you hit the word faith, highlight it, underline it, circle it, do something. You should, about 25 times in 40 verses, find the word faith. So this is the faith chapter of the Bible. And for those of you that have kids or grandkids that are just starting to read, that is one of the best things to do. I mean, at church, give them a Bible, open it to Hebrews 11, and say, circle every time you find the word faith. And a child begins to say, oh, faith is really important to a Christian. It's page 851 in those little pew Bibles, and if you want to mark up one of those, go for it. It's a good deal. And I'll try to move along because we've got 40 verses to get through today. Now, faith is the confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what was seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. And that's just a little side point at this place in the Scripture. Do you know why we read our Bibles? One of the reasons we should read. Not only does God speak to us, but the men and women of the Bible who live there speak to us. It says right here, Abel, even though he's dead, still speaks to us. So those stories are there because the people are speaking to us. Verse 5, by faith Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. He was commended as one who pleased God, and without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those that earnestly seek him. By faith Noah, when he was warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. By faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith Abraham, even though he was too old to have children, and Sarah herself was not able to conceive, was enabled to become the father because he considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had the opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so, in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the dead. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God, rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw who was invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and the application of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And what more shall I say? I don't have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about Samuel and David and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign enemies. Women who received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. There's a lot of stuff in that chapter. I'm going to just try to do a flyby today so that we can see what's there. Faith. And people will ask you, what is faith? There's no better place to get a definition of faith than the Bible. It is a noun, and in chapter 11, verse 1 of Hebrews, it tells us what faith is. It is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we don't see. If you can see it, if you can figure it out, if you can prove it, it isn't faith. Faith is a confidence for what you're hoping for. It is an absolute assurance of what you don't see. Last week I talked about hope. And our hope as Christians is forever with God, being forever with God. Can I see that? No. But am I sure of that? Absolutely I am. Do I have a confidence? Yes, I do. And that's what faith really is about. It's having that confidence and having that assurance of things that you can't see, figure out, feel, hear, or touch. Now, the old King James was this. I like the words back here of assurance and confidence. If you're a King James, or raised on the King James as I was, those words weren't used. These are the words. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Now, substance and evidence work, but to me that's not the same as assurance and confidence. Because an evidence and a substance are tangibles. And if they're tangibles, they can't really, that doesn't relate to faith. So I want you just to ponder that one a little bit. Now, this time of year, there's a whole lot of these believe things that you see. You know, these TV shows believe in the miracle of Christmas. I started looking up things that, what believes say, that, what does that mean? Oh, stand up, turn around. I was wondering what she was telling me. It says believe on her shirt. I didn't realize she was going to be a visual aid today. But believe in yourself is one of the things that you hear. Yeah. Believe in your dreams. In football teams, basketball teams, come on, we just got to believe we're going to win this game. You know, that this believe is kind of just tossed out there. I found this one that I'd never seen before, and I hope you can see that. It says, drive to believe. I don't know if you know what that car is. That's a Tesla. And it's one of these ultra-fast electric German cars. But drive to believe? I mean, and you use the word believe and faith interchangeably. And yet we look at what the world has done, and it's kind of cheapened it. And this is where I want us to end up today. I believe in Jesus, period. I believe in my dreams. I believe in other things. I believe in you. But I really believe in Jesus. That's what Christmas is. So, let's go back to what is faith. Confidence in what we hope for. Absolute knowing for certain, without a doubt, that it's going to happen. And assurance about what I don't see. Now, the confidence in what I hope for, what do we hope for? Eternity in heaven with God. That's what I hope for. Escape from this world and this earth. What don't I see? I don't see God. I don't see Jesus. I see evidence of him. I see what he's made. I see how he works through other people. But we don't see Jesus. We can't take God into a laboratory and prove that he's there, because we don't get him. We don't get God by science. We don't get God by knowledge. We don't get God by our intelligence. We have this unseen assurance that yes, he's there. And that's what Christmas is about. But faith we cannot have faith alone. You can't just say, yes, have faith. Just believe. That's only half the story. It does not work. You have to have faith in something. You have to believe in something. Even a football team can say, have faith that we're going to win this game. And it's not faith in the winning, but it's faith in the training that they've put in the practice that they have, in their strength and their ability. You know, and so you can have faith in that, but you can't just have faith all by itself. You can't just have belief all by itself. We have to have faith in something. And so we have to have faith in God. And that's what chapter 11 is really all about. It's not just faith, it's faith in God. In fact, this statement comes up in this chapter. Faith is the only way to please God. How does that hit you? He's not real impressed with what you've done and what I've done. He's not impressed with how many people we've led to the Lord. He's not impressed with all of our activity and our doing. He's impressed with our faith. That's the only way that God says, I'm proud. I'm pleased with that person. If I want to please God, the only way that's going to happen is through my faith. Now, this is often called the roll call of faith, chapter 11 of Hebrews. And so I'm going to run down through it. And we are the first in the roll call. Us, you and me. And it says that by faith, we believe that everything was created from something that wasn't there before. God spoke and it was. That's faith. Can I prove it to you? No. Do I believe it? Absolutely. And so by faith, we know that God created the earth. Abel showed his faith because he gave God the best. Cain also gave him some things, but it was kind of the leftovers. I can go into that. It's sort of like the original junk for Jesus. If you don't have any more use for it yourself, give it to the church. Give it to God. And that was kind of Abel's claim, was he gave God the best and Cain gave him the leftovers. But Abel gave God the best. Enoch walked with God and he didn't even die. That was because of his faith. Noah built an ark even though it had never rained on the face of the earth. And we forget that. But God says it's going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And I love Bill Cosby's old stuff, on Noah. But, I can just see Noah turning to God. What's rain? It had never rained before. And yet by faith he built an ark. And by his faith he condemned the world. Abraham obeyed God by his faith. He says, I'm going to take you out of here. I'm going to take you to a new place. God, any idea where we're going? Nope. Okay. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to assure, even though I can't see it. And by faith, he obeyed God. And he lived in the land that God promised him. He lived in a tent, granted, but he lived in that promised land. By faith, he fathered Isaac, even though he was, Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 when Isaac was born. And 90 and 100-year-old people don't have babies. And yet, by faith, they did. And by faith, he offered Isaac as a sacrifice to God. He didn't actually kill him, but he was ready to, because he knew that if God was faithful, he had that confidence that it would happen, and it says he received it. He knew that God could raise him back from the dead. In fact, he really, in a sense, did, because he had the knife up, was ready to kill him, and said, whoa, wait a minute, I know you're faithful, I believe you're faithful now. And so Abraham had that faith. Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, his two sons. By faith, he did that. By faith, Jacob blessed the two sons of Joseph. And then Joseph, by faith, said, don't leave my bones in Egypt because God has promised us this other land. I have faith in that. Take my bones with you when you go back to the promised land. And so, by faith, Joseph prophesied the Exodus from Egypt and going up to Israel. Moses chose obedience over wealth and power, over the pleasures of sin for a season in Egypt, even though he would have been the queen's son. Now figure that out. I'd rather run around in the desert for 40 years than to be here. And we spend so much time chasing stuff. By faith, the Israelites walked through the Red Sea, and then he says, and the writer says, and the Egyptians, when they tried to get through, they drowned. The Israelites also conquered Jericho, not because they were better warriors, but because they were marchers. 13 laps around the city. 7 days, 6 days, once a day, 7th day, 7 trips. I don't know if that was a reason that 13 is an unlucky number, but it was 13 laps around Jericho, and they conquered it. Rahab hid the spies, because by faith she knew that this God of Israel was the God that was going to be in charge of this land. And so she hid those spies. In fact, she even was included in the lineage of Jesus Christ. And it goes on and on and on. So don't panic. I'm not going to go through every list for everybody that's listed there, but I am going to fly through it. There is Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets and women, all mentioned in this chapter. Some by name, some by gender, but all these people are mentioned. What was their faith? What did they do? They conquered kingdoms. They administered justice. They received the promises that God gave them. They shut lions' mouths. We all know which one that one was, don't we? That Daniel. They lived through the fire. That was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They escaped the sword. The Sword. That's S-W-O-R-D. So they escaped the sword. They became strong. They received their dead back to life again. Think about all that. That's all by faith. But wait, there's more. I've always wanted to do that. Isn't that crazy? For $19.95, we will send you this cleaner. But wait, if you do that in the next 20 minutes, we'll send you two. But wait, there's more. I list all those people who by faith did those things. But wait, we're not done yet. Some of them others went through torture. They put up with being jeered and made fun of. They were beat up, they were flogged, they were stoned to death. They were sawn in two. Boy, you start thinking about this is some gory stuff. And they were killed by the sword. I spelled it right there. They were killed by the sword. They were destitute. They didn't have a big bankroll. They didn't have a fancy house or car. They were mistreated. They were persecuted, and they didn't have homes. They had to live in the caves and in holes in the ground. Well, how many want to be signing up for that one? That's what faith does. That's what people of faith put up with. That's what the people of faith in history have put up with. And I love this verse. Read it with me. Hebrews 11:38. The world was not worthy of them. They were too good for this world. That faith was beyond what this world can handle. The world was not worthy of them. It's like, wow. That just blows me completely away. And then these words just screamed out at me from the end of this chapter. None of them received what they were promised. What? Noah didn't, even though he built an ark? Moses didn't, even though he was given the Ten Commandments, led the children of Israel out, got them to the promised land. Joshua didn't, even though they went in and conquered all that. Daniel didn't, even though the lions' mouths were shut and he became a honcho in Babylon. What do you mean they didn't receive what was promised? Not the ultimate one. Because God, the whole story of the Bible is getting mankind and God back together. The problem is mankind sinned, and we got this huge canyon between us and him. And the rest of the Bible is God putting us back together. I promise. That's what God says. We're going to get back together. I promise. All of the people that I've talked about this morning are Old Testament, BC, before Christ, before Jesus came. They did not receive what was promised. That was still out there somewhere in the future. Their mind was there. Their faith said, yeah, it's something we haven't seen yet. But they did not, none of them received what was promised. Because God had planned something better for us. If you leave here with nothing else today, I want you to leave with that confidence. That if we have faith in God, He is going to see us through. He has better things planned for us. Things that we can't even imagine or dream about. He has better things planned for us. What does that look like? I love this picture. It's Mary and Joseph at the manger with the baby Jesus. God incarnate. God in the flesh. God here on earth. God's only Son. Helpless in a manger. Going to live a sinless life so that you and I can go back into relationship with God. And you look at that manger, and who isn't going to just, oh, a baby. Everybody loves babies. Now how about torture? How about a gruesome death? Look at the shadow behind that manger. It's It's the shadow of the cross. God has something better planned for us because of what Jesus has done. By coming to earth, by dying, by rising again, and by forgiving our sins. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for the fact that you do have something much better planned for us. I thank you that you have given us this way of faith, that we are to be people of faith, with assurance and confidence of what we can't see and of what we hope for. Lord, I ask that you would help us never to waver on that. Help us to hold on with all of the strength that you give us to that confidence and that assurance. I thank you for the gift of Jesus Christ, who came to live that perfect life and died in my place and in the place of each one of us. I ask that you be with each person that's here today and listening, that they would know that there is a God who loves them, that all that we need to do is ask you to forgive us and to have faith in you in the things that we can't see. Help us never to let loose of the faith of Christmas. And more than anything, we need your help to believe. I ask now that you would be with us as we leave this place. Watch over us, keep us safe, and help us to show this faith by the way we live. In Jesus' name.